Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We're going to give it just a couple more minutes and we'll start right on time at 2 o'clock. All right, I have 2 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad you joined us today. Hopefully you got the memo that we have moved our webinar Wednesdays to 2 o'clock for the year. Due to survey responses, it seemed like it would be a better fit for everybody. So glad you made it. My name is Rochelle Davies, and I am a school nutrition program specialist. I am assigned to Region 6, which is in the southeast corner-ish of the state, and I am based out of Billings. So today we are joined with Erin Turner is joining me. She will be presenting with me on the later half of the presentation. Erin, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Erin Turner, and I'm a school nutrition program specialist. And I'm based out of Bozeman. My region, I cover the southwestern portion of Montana. Thank you for joining us today.
And we also have Caroline Olson on with us, who is another one of the specialists. She does the north central section of the state. And Caroline is available in the chat box. If you guys have any questions that you'd like to type into the chat box, please feel free to either unmute yourself and ask us live, or you can just put them in the chat box. So with that, I'm going to get started. Today we're going to talk about administrative reviews. We're going to give you an overview and talk about what you need to know in order to prepare for them. I already see at least one person on here that is expecting an administrative review this year, so I hope that this is helpful. So here is our team. I love showing the team picture because many of you we talk to on the phone all the time, but you can see our pictures and put a name to the face until we actually get to see you in person. So we have 6 specialists that are based in various areas around the state and travel and do our administrative reviews. We also have an IT manager who manages our technology things that we're implementing, was instrumental in things like the new DCA and when we got maps a couple years ago. We also have Allie, our data analyst, who processes claims and just a wealth of knowledge. And front and center, we have Clay Hickman, our wonderful administrative assistant. I always say Clay is the hub to the wheel that is OPI school nutrition programs. And Without him, the wheel might fall off. We have our wonderful Assistant Director, Camille, and our Director, Chris Emerson. You might have seen them before in previous trainings. And our Summer Program Manager, Kim, here in the front. And last but not least, we have Pam Frew, our wonderful USDA Foods Program Manager. So as we briefly mentioned, we have regions. For the 6 specialists, we have divided regions. You can see the outlines here, and we each have a section of the state. You can always call any one of us, but we prefer that you contact your regional specialist. It's just helpful for us as we continue with conversations with each school that we have a history and understand the problems and can help you out better. So I'll show you on the MAPS homepage. When you log in, you can see if you know what region you are in. You can find the phone number listed for each of us. And if you have a question on which region you might fall in, I'm sure you know your county, but if you have a question, you can always click here to see which region we have you placed in. And with that, I'm going to get started. So, what is the administrative review? So, in a normal year, a non-COVID year, what it would look like is one of us who is assigned to your review, an OPI specialist, is going to come on site. We're going to review program documentation. We are going to watch your meal services. If you offer breakfast, we'll be there in time to watch breakfast. We'll absolutely watch lunch. We might stay late enough to watch after school snack if you participate in that program. And then we'll spend a lot of time with you and with other professionals that have jobs related to school nutrition, asking a lot of questions. And we might provide some kind of training or technical assistance if we have some ideas that could help streamline processes for you, or if we see something that might need to change. And then anything that we see that would be a program error that needs to be changed, we call those corrective action. They're also sometimes referred to as findings. However, this year in COVID, in school year 2020-2021, we will not be coming on site. So all the administrative review things are going to be conducted electronically. So what that means, you can see here, I have noted in red that we are going to meet with you via Zoom. So we'll set up a Zoom link with you and anyone else, you know, the food service director, maybe a clerk or a business official, possibly your administrator, anybody that has program knowledge or covers a specific area that we want to discuss and find out more. We'll also still do a lot of program documentation reviews. We, instead of reviewing what we normally do on site, we are going to ask that those things are uploaded into MAPS. So if you are on review, don't worry, we have pretty clear communication lined out with like lists of what we'll be looking for and instructions on how to upload that documentation. And then still, even though we're meeting electronically, we might have areas that we want to talk about for technical assistance or program suggestions. And then again, anything that we find that would be a program error that we have to write up as corrective action, we'll show you how we do that in a few slides. So how often do we come to see you? Previously, it was every 3 years. So every 3 years, you could expect to get one of us to come on site. Well, starting last year, we were approved for a 5-year waiver. So we took that 3-year review schedule and we started pushing that timeline out so that all of our schools were now spread over 5 years. So as we're in this implementation phase, you might still have only been 3 years from your previous review. You might get 4 years from your last review, and some of you lucky schools might get the first round of 5 years between reviews. So we do have this all plotted out in our files. If you're ever curious where you fall, if you're not sure, you can always call us and ask. So now I'm going to start diving deeper. So what are we actually looking at when we come on site? Um, we'll be looking at the National School Lunch Program, and then the rest of these are if you participate. So if you do offer breakfast, the school breakfast program, we're going to be looking at that too. We're going to be looking at the after school snack program if you participate in that, and if you have been invited and have elected into the fresh fruit and vegetable program, we're of course going to review that also. So again, diving deeper, what are we looking at? We're going to start looking at production records. We're going to make sure that you have been serving the required components and what the serving sizes are. If you're familiar with the serving sizes, how they change for each school, we want to see that reflected on that production record. So we're going to look at a period of time and ask for all of those production records. So we're going to look at 1 month for everything you served for lunch, for example, and then that same month for everything that you served for breakfast. We're definitely going to review all the free and reduced applications that are on file for the school year. We're going to make sure that you have that your DCA list, your direct certification application list, that you're downloading that and updating that your POS and your benefit issuance documents appropriately to make sure that the kiddos are getting their correct benefit issued to them, and that those free and reduced applications were processed correctly and timely, notice sent to the families, etc. We're going to be looking at verification. So in a normal year, of course, we would be looking to see that you did verification every year. We'll look to see, was the timeline met? Did you start gathering those numbers of applications in the categories on October 1st? What kind of letter did you send home to the families and when? If they didn't respond, did you again request documentation? If you got documentation, did it was it processed appropriately? Was it acceptable from the acceptable timeframes? Did it contain all the required information like parent's name, pay period, etc.? And then communication after that. Did the benefit level change based on what they submitted? And if so, did you send notice of that within the required timeframes? Or also, if it supported what the original determination was, did you send confirmation of that? We're going to be looking at professional standards. We're going to see, we're going to ask how many employees are actively working in school nutrition programs related job duties. Did they get the appropriate training? Are they meeting the minimum requirements for their continuing education per year? We have a great handout on our website if you're ever wondering how many hours each person needs. But we want to see that you're getting the training, you're meeting those minimums, and that it's documented. So we have a few resources available on our website and in download forms that you can use to track, or at minimum, you have file folders with certificates or notebook written down trainings when you're holding them with your employees. So we're going to look and see what you have on your professional standards. And I understand that if we are coming to see you in November, let's say, of this school year or any school year, you might not have gotten your 12 hours for the year. So we just want to see, what's your plan? How are you going to get that 12 hours? And we will probably ask you for, okay, show me what you did last year so I can see that you got your 12 hours last year. We are going to, of course, review your wellness policy and review your assessment of implementation on that wellness policy. We ask for a couple of other policies or procedures as well, like a meal charge policy, your procurement policy or procurement procedures. We're going to look at revenue and expenditure reports. We'll probably go and ask your clerk to run a specific report for us. And as we review that, if we have additional questions on that, we might come back with more document requests or just ask you clarifying questions. We're of course going to look at your meal counts and make sure that those claims that were submitted are accurate for the counts that you have. So we might ask for, if you do it by paper, we'll ask for that checkoff sheet for the month. If you use a POS software system, we might ask you for specific reports from that POS so that we can cross-check and make sure that the claims were accurate. When we're on site, we would normally view your HACCP plan. We want to see that you have a written safety plan, that it contains the required elements in there, and that it's up to date. So we definitely think food safety is important for our students, and we want to make sure that the plan is being implemented and that it's communicated to your staff. We are, of course, going to look at procurement, and procurement is going to be a whole separate review. So when we are conducting these reviews with schools, we're doing it all at the same time, and it might feel like it's just a continuation of questions in another area, but you'll get a separate notification of any corrective action that we find and a separate closure email for a procurement review. So I'm going to show you in just a few slides. I'm going to get into maps and give you a live demo of how those are split out. If you guys have anything that we're looking at for smart snacks, do you have vending machines? Do you have a student store? Do you have fundraisers that are offered during school hours? Anything that falls under the smart snack guidelines. That would be foods sold or available to purchase by students during the school day. So we're going to take a look at what's in those vending machines. Is it appropriate? Do they meet the smart snack guidelines? What grade groups have access? And there are more things, but I did not want to fill up the slide with a bunch of words. So as we go through the offsite questions, as you go through the offsite questions, you'll see that there are some other pieces that we do ask about as well. So if you are curious, if you are on review this year, we do have a list. These are the schools that are going to be on review this year. So Brittany, I saw you're here. Belgrade Schools is up for their review this year. And we did just stick this list in the maps download forms section. And I have this again on a slide at the end. So if you can't find yourself right away and you're still curious, don't fear, I'm going to show this slide again. But for now, I'm going to advance. Okay. If you are on review this year, we will start putting the scheduled date in maps once we get everybody scheduled on our calendars. So here pretty soon, and I'll show you this in a slide or two, we're going to send review announcements to everyone saying, hey, you're on review. And then let's say you show up in my queue and I get assigned as the lead reviewer for your school. I'm going to come into maps and I'm going to start scheduling. And once I will show you this live here in a little bit. You'll see your entrance date here. This is the day that in a normal year we would be coming on site to your school. But what that will mean this year is that this is the day we are officially starting your review. We'll probably have a Zoom entrance meeting with at least one of your staff members, maybe all of you if it works. But this is technically the day of review, and this will help determine what other periods of time we're going to be asking for documentation. For example, those production records. So if you are scheduled in November, we're going to ask you for production records from October of that year. Now I am going to get us into maps. Give me just 1 second, guys, while I make a new screen share on Zoom. Okay, so this is what it looks like. I'm sure you're aware of this when you log into Maps. So when you log into Maps, you're going to be looking at this blue tile, School Nutrition Programs. This is where your school year administrative review is going to be. So after you click on the blue tile, we're going to be working mostly in this blue, in the compliance section up in this blue bar. So after you click on compliance, you're going to see review tracking and procurement review tracking. So these are the two areas of review I mentioned a minute ago. So I'll start with the review tracking real quick. When we get into review tracking, if you have previously had a review since we implemented maps, you'll start to see a list here of reviews. If you have never had a review yet since we implemented maps, you might just see one. So I'm just going to use Plentywood as an example because I conducted their review last year. You're going to go to the current, of course, if this was you, it would say 2020, 2021. You're going to click on details for your current review. And you can see that their entrance date was last March. When you get in here, you're going to see, like I said, your lead reviewer, your entrance date, and a lot of this other stuff will be blank initially. You're going to want to go down to your review forms. And this is what we are calling the off-site questions. And if you've been through reviews previously, you might recognize these questions as they used to come in paper form. Now they're all in maps. What you would do is you're going to click on the food service director and the claim contact as listed in the maps application will have both view and modify. You're going to want to click on modify here, and it's going to bring up each of these forms one in turn. So as you open it up, it'll have a list of questions in there. You're going to want to answer each question as completely as you can, and then at the bottom it'll have a button that says validate. When you click on validate, it'll do a quick check back through that form and make sure you didn't miss anything. If you missed something, it'll show that there are errors with a red stop sign, and it'll indicate that you need to go back and complete that. If you haven't missed anything, it will progress you to the next form automatically. So now it will progress you into verification, where you'll have another set of questions to answer. So once you've gone through all of these sections and answered the questions, there will be one additional section right here. You're going to see your school, the site that is on review, and you're going to have to remember to click into this, and there will be what you might have heard us call the DSAT, Dietary Specifications Assessment Tool. We also refer to it as the Menu Practices Questionnaire. So you'll see both you can complete online here in MAPS, and there will also be a paper form sent this year in your menu review packet, which Erin is going to show us here in just a minute. And then also for the offsite forms, you're going to need to remember that we have this procurement review also. So once we get into the procurement review, same thing, it shows these reviews. You're going to click on details for the current year, current review. And in the procurement section, you're going to go down to what's called the sponsor procurement table. So when you click on this, it's just going to ask for some basic procurement information. So you're going to list who would be in charge of your procurement, who has the most information and is the authority on procurement. And then you're going to come down and you're going to add if you participate in a GPO, a group purchasing organization, SWIMS used to be, now they're called School Services of Montana, but uh, School Services of Montana is a really popular group purchasing organization. MCS is another one that you might participate in your state, I'm sorry, at your school. If you do elect into and utilize one of these organizations, you're going to want to list them here. And then the last thing is that you are going to go into either micro purchase, small purchase, formal contracts, food service management, or possibly processing contracts. So you're going to go into each section that's applicable, and you're going to start listing your vendors. So if you use, for example, Plentywood used FSA, US Foods. So they listed them as one vendor, and then over the year, they paid them $55,363.50. And then so on and so forth down the list. You're just going to start listing all of your vendors that you used in the last completed school year. So that's important. Make sure that you are looking at school year 1920 if you are on review this year. And then you're going to list the total amount paid to each vendor for that year. Okay, I know that was a lot. I'm going to pause real quick for questions. Does anybody have any questions on any of that? Okay. Feel free to enter into the chat box again if you have some questions, or if you'd like to have a whole conversation on any of that, you can definitely reach out to your regional specialist. And with that, I'm going to start a new screen share and go back to our slides. Okay. Erin, can you see my slides again?
Yes, you're good.
Okay, thanks. Always want to make sure. Okay, so what does it look like, the timeline? So as I mentioned, in usually September or October, we send a general review announcement email. So that's going to come to your food service director and the claim contact listed in MAPS, and it will just generally say that you're on review for this year. Here are the 3 things that we're asking you to complete. We're going to ask that you complete your offsite questions, that you complete your menu practices questionnaire within that offsite questions, just trying to further identify that, hey, there's that additional section in MAPS, don't forget. And then third, we're going to ask that you go in and complete your sponsor procurement table. 30 to 45 days before your review, you're going to get a hard packet mailed to your school. Now, this gets addressed to the authorized representative, and Erin is going to talk about what's in that packet a little bit more and show some examples. On the day of review, typically we come on site, but as I mentioned, we're not going to come on site this year. We're going to be meeting via Zoom, and all of our documentation needs to be submitted electronically. After your review, we are going to enter any corrective action into MAPS and then give you notification that, hey, your corrective action is all ready for you to go in and review and respond to. And when we do communicate that, we give instructions with pictures on how to enter your responses. Once we get your responses submitted in MAPS, we are going to go and review them. If they're acceptable, we accept them. And once all of the corrective action have been accepted, we can send you a closure email. And we say, thank you for everything, and we'll see you in 5 years. So now we're going to get into a little bit more of what that might look like. If you are wondering what exactly we're going to ask for or how to prepare for your review, or just in general, if it's a normal school year, I always refer to the annual programs checklist. This is basically your roadmap for the year. It outlines what the requirements are and then applicable deadlines. So I definitely suggest that you would start here if you don't already use this. Um, I love to see when the key players that are involved in school nutrition programs sit down at maybe the beginning of the year and identify who's going to be responsible for what. So that's what this column is right here. Definitely have a, a meeting with anybody relevant and decide who's going to be responsible for that, and just make sure that all of these things are covered. As I said, that email notification is going to be sent to the claim contact and the food service director. So if you are new to the district this year, please make sure that your correct contact information is listed in the MAP system, because that's how we're going to send notice of this. And we want to make sure that you guys get that announcement email and get all the instructions that we're sending to you. Just a reminder, this is what that offsite questions screen looks like. Your review dashboard, you're gonna go to the review forms, click detail, and get into those offsite questions. Oh, I just wanted to mention, we do ask that you complete these early in the school year, and I understand if maybe it gets missed or you guys are really busy, especially this year. Believe me, we understand. We ask at minimum that these are completed before the review, because they do all have to be answered, all of these questions. So if they're not answered by the time we are conducting the review, we basically go through them one at a time, and really um, it's really demanding on your time while you guys are really busy. So if you can, please make sure that these are completed before your review. I showed you this in Maps Live. Okay. Erin, I will let you talk about this if you don't mind when you talk about the menu practices questionnaire.
Sure.
And I did the procurement table. My apologies, guys. I jumped way out on my slides and just showed you everything. So like I said, you're going to get that hard packet mailed to you, your menu review packet, 30 to 45 days before your review. If you know that your review is coming and you have not seen that packet yet, please reach out to your authorized representative. This is generally your superintendent who's listed as the authorized representative. Um, Sometimes things get lost or they get buried, left on a desk. So it's really important that you do get that packet. So if you haven't seen it, like I said, go looking for it. Start with whoever is listed here as the authorized representative, which is generally your superintendent. Okay, and with that, I am going to pause my screen sharing and turn it over to Erin.
Great. Give me 1 second to set mine up here to share. Okay. I think I'm ready to go. All right. So like Rochelle said, you'll receive your menu review packet in the mail about 30 to 45 days prior to your scheduled review date. And this should also be prior to you, prior to the week that we're asking you to get all this documentation for. So you can plan for that week to set aside all the necessary documents to then mail us back. Just read the instructions carefully. Each pocket has its own label on them, and there's a label on the front of who you will send that packet back to as well. But for that one specified week, which will be documented on your packet. You're going to want to gather all the required documentation, such as all your production records for both your breakfast and lunch that week. Any recipes that you use during that week we'll need to review. Also, any food labels and ingredient lists from all your ingredients that you've used for that week, and then your menu for that month as well will be required. And you're going to want to collect all that information and mail that document back to us at least 10 days prior to your scheduled review date, or as soon as you can after that week that you've collected the documentation for. Included in that packet, there may be, like Rochelle said, a questionnaire about your menu practices. However, you can either mail that back to us included in that packet, or you can fill that out online, which is what this slide is showing. When you're on your offsite review questions, there's a section under sites that will be open for one specific site, and you'll just click on details there. And then that's where that survey will come up, and you'll want to modify it both for breakfast and for lunch. And this is what the online form looks like. It's just a drop-down menu for your answers for each of those questions for how your menu purchasing practices goes for you at your school. And then you'll want to be sure to hit that validate button on there as well. So another important part of the packet is your nutrition labels, ensuring that you're sending every nutrition label that you use for every item for both breakfast and lunch. And this slide really demonstrates what a complete nutrition label looks like. It will include the nutrition facts, but also all the ingredients that is in that processed item. A lot of products now include CN or child nutrition labels, which I'll talk about a little bit more. But if you have any information like that on your menu, I'm sorry, on your label, be sure to include that as well. I kind of showed this one to the right of what not to do. I do receive a lot of just this nutrition facts label, which doesn't tell me what the product is or what ingredients are in the product. So just be sure that it's a complete nutrition label, including your ingredients. And I also like to point out, just so you're not wasting your time, we don't need labels. I don't need you to go and Google information for like fresh vegetables or fresh fruit. I don't need like the ingredients or the nutrition label for fresh spinach. For everything else that's processed, including condiments, however, we do need that information provided. Here's an example, like I was talking about, of a CN or child nutrition label. So if you can include this, if it comes on your package along with the ingredients, this is definitely something you'll want to include as well. It will let us know how to credit this product towards those food components that are required. Here's another example. If we do ask you for a product formulation statement, let's say we received a nutrition label for a product that we just don't know how to credit because it doesn't have a child nutrition label on it. You can go back to your manufacturer and actually sometimes your vendor and request this information. It basically breaks it down to tell you what the product is, how much of raw ingredients are in there, and then it'll tell you how much that item credits towards in the school nutrition program. Another example of like a product label and nutrition information is, in this case, for like a USDA food. We can look this information up for you, but I'm providing this slide just so you know to ensure that you know what your products are crediting towards. So for example, this pulled pork product from USDA that's frozen and cooked, um, it will tell you how much it credits for the yield that you're using. So in this case, 2 ounces of this pulled pork product with its juice credits as 1 ounce equivalent of meat or meat alternate. And that's important for you to know, not only to ensure you're serving your kids the correct amount, but also when you're documenting on your production record. For example, I see schools sometimes on their production records select that they're serving 2 ounces across the board every day of meat. But in this case, if they were to serve 2 ounces of that pulled pork item, that would be equivalent to just 1 ounce of meat or meat alternate. So if you were striving to actually credit it for 2 ounces, in this case, you would want to serve 4 ounces to your students. That brings me to production records. Obviously, we will need that completed and sent back in that packet for the entire week, both breakfast and lunch, and it be completed, filled out appropriately, showing everything that you serve daily for those meals. Also, with any recipes, like I said, there's a section in your packet that will be for all your recipes used for that week. We hope to see standardized recipes. What we're looking for is we will actually calculate based on the number of servings in the standardized recipe how much a menu component will credit towards. So for this example, like a ground beef, 8 pounds in this recipe for 96 servings, what would that credit per serving as a meat item? And we can do that calculation. It's nice if you know how to calculate that as well, but we will do that calculation on our end to ensure that recipe credits enough for each component. So what could cause a fiscal action for menu review? So I made a little list here that includes missing meal components. It's very important that you are offering every meal component for the meal pattern every day for every meal. If there is a missing component, let's say, for example, a grain was not offered, that is a fiscal action where we could take money back because that was not a reimbursable meal that you served because it was missing that component. Missing production records is another big reason to have fiscal action. Production records are super important. They're basically the receipt that shows what you served for your students, those meals. So we do need to have those maintained in your files 3 years plus the current year. And then the last one is repeat findings. So from your last review, if you had any findings on the last review, let's say a finding for insufficient amount of fruit was offered, there could be a potential fiscal action if we do see that same finding again during this administrative review. So just very careful to ensure that you are actually looking at your fiscal action from the previous one, and just make sure you're following the program rules to ensure that you are offering reimbursable meals. Oh, back to the menu practice questionnaire. This is the paper form that we would send in that menu review packet if you weren't, for some reason, able to do it electronically in MAPS. And it's just very important that the actual food service director or cook or someone in the kitchen is filling out the questions on this, and not somebody in the office or maybe the clerk who doesn't really know your practices in the kitchen. So I just wanted to make a statement about that. Let's see, before your review, again, Rochelle pretty much covered most of this, but We will be in contact with you, and you are welcome to call us throughout this review process. Um, we'll probably reach out and talk to you personally. We may be back and forth with emails to you, but we really want to get you prepared for that, what we're calling day of review, which is your scheduled review date. So if you're missing any questions in maps, or you're missing anything to attach and upload forms in Match that we need to see in maps, we'll reach out to you and just confirm any logistics about the review process. And then on that day of review, like Rochelle said, we will conduct a meeting via Zoom, and the food service director is welcome to join, the claim contact, the clerk, anyone who has an important job in school nutrition. Even the superintendent is welcome to join. We'll kind of sum up any last minute documentation requests, and then we'll provide you information about potential findings. And then after we conduct that meeting, any resources that we still need to collect, we'll let you know if we're missing anything. We'll have your corrective action documents ready to go and entered into MAPS, and we'll send you an email when that is ready within 30 days after your day of review. And then you have 30 days to respond to those corrective action documents. And then once we receive your response for your findings, we'll review them and accept them, hopefully, in MAPS. And then we'll send you a notice that your review is closed. So that is really all of our presentation today. If you guys have any questions, please let us know. I'll also put up this slide about if you are on review this year or not. Yeah, so thank you for joining us. Let us know if you do have any questions at this time.